Hi everybody, Carl here, aka Mondo. Recently I made a video on Instagram, a live video which allows you to go longer in time and length, about basically communication, but under the guise of not answering. And that was an uncomfortable realization to have to come to, but I couched it in Zen terms to some degree, mostly just saying that, contrary to what your usual polite social demeanor may be, if you find that trying to communicate with someone causes you toxic conditions and stress, you have a right not to answer. When I say right, of course, we always have a right, but I mean in terms of your etiquette and what you think is socially normal and considerate. Are you going to turn? Jeez. And I made another video about how we need a common vocabulary to have discussions, and that was foundation principle that I was laying the base for in order to talk about love. Wow, I'm doing the speed limit here, and now I have to go above the speed limit to get that guy to be the proper distance away from me. I thought driving in New York was frustrating. For the most part, I've enjoyed driving in Colorado. But anyway, I am here to talk to you today about how even more frustrating than, and this is just an anecdotal comment on the subject before I get fully started, even more frustrating than, say, one of the most frustrating things in life being the loss of love or relationship or a job, is when talking to your friends and family, some of them anyway, turns out to be more painful than what I just described, the loss of love or friendship or a job. So I have some people among my friends and family with whom discussion is at the least frustrating and at the most infuriating. And that's not just because of their baseline attitude toward facts and their unconscious arrogance and disrespect for others, and this is usually among religious people too, right? I don't mean in addition to, I mean this is usually religious people, right? Because it's more disconcerting to have the people who attest to being your friends and your family be the ones who cause you the most pain. And it's not as painful as maybe losing a job or a loved one, but it certainly feels like it's more painful because these are supposed to be the people who understand you the best, and they don't. And that's really what has to be said. They don't understand you. So I have people who don't understand me, right? I mean, not the language that I use, the words that I use, although that's sometimes part of it. But they don't know me. Because if they knew me, they wouldn't assume the things that they're assuming in order to take the adversarial positions that they're taking. And that's really painful, to know that the people that are closest to you in your life, some of them anyway, know you the least. And I long ago dispensed with being able to make a connection with certain very close people in my life because they can't know me. And, I don't know what one or another aspect of their psychology is the main culprit, but I know generally it's because of their brains. All of us are either beneficiaries or victims of our brains. We are, quote unquote, dealt a brain, which we receive, and then we change it by earning the conditions of it. But we receive it from the chemistry that was given us by our mothers the environment that she was in, and her brain chemistry and culture. So, you know, when you get away from the people that put you in a minor rage, you can compassionately come to the conclusion that they can't really help it. But in the midst of it, it's torture because it's wrecking your health. And not knowing these things as a child, you just think people are either troubled or bad or whatever. And you carry that dysfunction and toxicity into your life, and it ruins jobs, relationships, and education because you've acquired a similar or the same brain chemistry. You have become a toxic person yourself, chemically and then emotionally. So I lost relationships because of this, and I lost jobs because of this, and I lost a good part of my educational performance because of this. And I'm not blaming these people. I'm explaining what happens. People are toxic because they're born into toxic situations. And then when they know it, if they ever know it, they have to do the hard work of disentangling and detoxifying their brains. And they may reach certain levels of success, as I did, by moving to a more civil country, by spending time with more civil friends, mostly. But in my case, and I would think in most people's cases, you never fully detoxify because those neural pathways are still in your brain. And most especially you find this out when you come home and you have to live with these people. And they trigger you again and again and again, especially when they never engaged in the detoxification that you did. Some people will engage in what they may, in an ancillary way, think is a religious detoxification. But if it's not the right religion or philosophy, they're really not detoxifying, they're justifying. I could talk about that in another video. I'm not going to get into it here. It's sort of a tangent. How some religions just justify the way you are. I mean, you probably don't have to guess which religions I'm talking about. That was a really close turn that guy made. So you find yourself, despite your practice, mind being mindfulness and Zen, if not heavily prepared for it, like one might prepare for a space flight, falling into toxicity, especially if you are surrounded by the same toxic people that you grew up with. And it's quite disastrous for your health. I mean, you have physical repercussions, not just emotional, not just energy-wise. You feel the pain, and you feel the stress. You shake. You get the fight or flight response. And it almost destroys you for the rest of the day. And this situation evolved from your wanting to have just an amicable conversation. So this is how it usually goes. When I'm talking to one of these people, whether it's about friends or in relation to friends or directly, tangentially about religion or politics or philosophy, you find yourself in an argument, most especially when these people talk over you and sort of misunderstand you, and then double down on their misunderstanding even when you're trying to tell them they're not getting you right, and then they're gaslighting you. And because you were raised in a situation where people talk over one another, you naturally fall into this pattern of innocently speaking over the other person with polite interruptions. And when it's at a juncture where they're totally misinterpreting what you're saying and gaslighting you, that talking over becomes loud, and before you know it, you've woven yourself into a yelling match. And depending on the rank of this person, you know, socially, they may then gaslight you to others. Now you have a bad reputation and you have to explain yourself to others, some of whom know the situation and have the same problems with the same people. But this is how people grow in toxicity, grow in anger, they grow in the unraveling of whatever progress they made in their minds and in their bodies. They grow in incompetency because this begins to weave itself into their lives. I've experienced all of this. And it's one of the things that made me want to move to Japan, because the people there, to a fault, restrain themselves out of respect for another person. I don't know if it's the same in their families, but I would imagine it's better than it is in the United States. So I guess if I were to make a practical point of this so that it just doesn't sound like ranting and expository explanations about what I think is wrong with people, I would say that you have to extricate yourself from these toxic situations, especially with people with whom you may have tried to help or have congenial conversations. And invariably, it ends up being with religious people who, and I've expounded on this point before because a friend brought this up to me, and I've adopted the idea because I think it makes perfect sense in lieu of the history and behavior that you're going to experience. These people don't get their morals from their religion. They justify their morals and bad behavior via their religions. And this has become socially normalized. So everything from interpersonal relationships all the way up to and exceeding war and genocide, these people will justify bad behavior on the part of their cohort, the people they support, and in their own defense. It's a psychological situation which replaces any kind of credibility, normalcy, and the sad thing is, you come to the conclusion that you're not going to be able to change their minds politically to save the environment, the country, social, political, and civil and human rights. And you wind up being the people that when you were growing up as an activist, you never thought you could be, and that is the ones that say, can't talk to those people. If you look at the American political situation, this is exactly what has been exploited, because it's not always exactly what has happened. There are people in politics, say in the Republican Party, who know what they're doing. They know to the detail that I know what's going on, but they just exploit it, and they get the votes of these people whose brains are compromised with toxicity, self-aggrandizement, arrogance, antisocial behavior, antisocial politics, which should be a meme if it's not already. And so you have the state of the world as it is. Of course, you can also factor into that low IQ, which is exacerbated by these conditions of toxicity, self-aggrandizement, arrogance, a need to comport with people who are lying, and so on. And so you have the state of the world, which really is not going to change very much. It's just not. I have had countless discussions with people who, as I said in the other video the other day about vocabulary, because we don't agree on vocabulary, we can't really talk. If they want to talk to me about the things that are happening in, say, the Republican Party, or with family planning clinics, or human rights activists, or BLM or something, we won't agree on what a fact is. How are we going to move forward? How am I going to change their minds? How are they going to change mine? They can't change mine because I know what a fact is, and I have my mind changed by people who know what a fact is. It's within my bandwidth to change my mind to that degree. My brain is at least that healthy that you can change my mind. But you can't change my mind with conspiracy theories that have no proof, with lies, with hearsay, with culture wars that really don't measure up on a scale of importance next to the environment, the Constitution, women's rights. And so we're never going to come to agreement. To them, I'm in a cult, and I know they're in a cult. And so how are you going to get anywhere? It's like talking to children.